Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in this one, I wanted to bring you my 10.2 Master Moonkin PvP guide. We're going to talk talents, we're going to talk gear, we're going to talk stats, we're going to talk everything that you need to know to have immediate success on the specialization, which I would highly recommend for this patch. It is highly versatile. It's good in all content for PvP. It is a lot more accessible due to the class changes that they have made. They've reduced the complexity of it quite significantly. So both power and accessibility have improved, and it's great all-arounder, and also has multiple customizations in terms of builds and play styles. It's my favorite specialization. There's probably a reason why I keep coming back to it. So you've definitely picked the right spot to check out a video in terms of picking a specialization for this patch. Now, Balanced Druid has multiple builds. You can see my details from the last engagement that I was in, that I was pumping some pretty big numbers, and those numbers were pumped with this build. So if you want the build that does the highest amount of damage per second, this is going to be the build that you want to go after. I think that this build is spectacular in Battleground Blitz, and I'm going to be running it in solo shuffle for as long as I can, or at least until it stops working. But I've kind of got some feelings that it may actually work for a decent amount of time. Now, this is a Starfall build, so the main focus of this is keeping Sunfire and Moonfire on as many targets as possible. We are running Wild Mushrooms. With the changes, it is now 1 talent for the dot and the immediate damage application. This is going to allow us to instantly apply 3 dots to a target with Waning Twilight, which gives us even increased damage, more increased damage to the targets that are triple dotted. So Moonfire, Sunfire, everything. Wild Mushroom hits everything. Starfall is cleaving all of it with this Waning Twilight buff, and we're doing a ton of damage. Now, when we have time to cast, we're going to want to apply Stellar Flare. I've been really liking this one for Astral Power generation and just overall damage. It's been doing decently well for me. You can bait kicks with Cyclone and then cast this as a follow-up. That's a good way to get through interrupts if you're having a tough time with interrupts. It also runs Arcanic Pulsar, which is going to give us proc incarnations, which gives us a huge window of damage every time that this happens. But the main goal is still keep dots up and spam Starfall. And we've got Star Weaver, which is another big incorporation of the build, which is every time that we press Starfall, we have a chance to make Star Surge free. You do want to cast Starfall first because it's a 40% chance to make Star Surge free, whereas Star Surge is only 20% to make Starfall free. So spam Starfall. When you get a Star Surge free proc, lob that thing out as soon as possible. Might give you a free Starfall, and then go back to spamming Starfall as much as you can. We are running Starburst, Thorns, and Moonkin Aura for maximum damage output, of course. You can run New Moon. I think New Moon, Half Moon, Full Moon are good if you're not being attacked. But if there are a lot of interrupts and you're expecting to get attacked and you're getting annoyed, I would recommend running Fury of Elune. It's just guaranteed damage, guaranteed Astral Power generation, and you got to keep that engine and that fuel going for your Starfalls, or otherwise your damage starts to get capped a bit there if you're not keeping the Starfalls rolling and proccing the Star Surges too much. But I really love this build. I've loved this build every patch that I've tried it. This patch may actually be the one that we may be able to actually make it work more than any other one. The other build that I am running, which is basically last season's build with Wild Mushroom, is a slight alteration, which is why it's important to watch the video and not just copy the talents, because some of these will have some customizations within them. The first thing is Wild Mushroom. I take this against melee cleaves or anything that has multiple targets that are going to be stacked, because it makes it really easy to get Waning Twilight for triple dots, and I like the snare to be able to kite my enemies. But if I'm running against like double caster and there's not a lot of stacked enemies, you can drop Wild Mushroom for Elune's Guidance, and this is just going to give you more pump on your Star Surges for single target damage. This is more of a calculated strategic build. This is the build from last season that focuses on heavy Cyclone usage and trying to pick your moments for burst damage, but it's also going to be a lot more accessible this patch because Rattle the Stars got changed to just be a flat damage increase. Previously, this stacked up and you had to manage the stacks, and if you didn't pull your Astral Power the right way, your damage would really get hindered. So it's a lot more accessible now that it's just flat damage. You just press Star Surge when you're in Eclipse, and you're basically getting value from Rattle the Stars no matter what. And this is what I meant by a huge improvement in terms of accessibility and power here for this patch. Now, our honor talents do change a little bit. I think Alkan Adept and Moonkin Aura are really good base ones to pretty much take in all cases. Fairy Storm is good against hunters, particularly marksmanship hunters, and subtlety rogues to stop rapid fire damage or to stop shadow dance pressure. It's really good to run Fairy Storm in those matchups. High Winds can be really good into Fistweaver monks. I think that's particularly its good niche, is because when the Mistweaver comes out, they're doing less damage and healing, and it double dips when they're Fistweaving. So High Winds into Fistweaver monks is really good. Or just good in general. You can run High Winds whenever there aren't melee DPS for Thorns to get value. I think High Winds is a good fallback. Or if you're really struggling with interrupts, you could drop Moon and Stars, which is going to be when you enter Eclipse. You get a circle on the ground that makes you immune to kicks. On the Druid side of the tree, I prefer to run Improved Stampeding Roar. I really like the cooldown reduction. Now, it's going to be a DPS loss over running Improved Sunfire, which makes Sunfire AoE. One of the main problems with AoE Sunfire is that it does break crowd control. So if you're playing with classes that have CC, like Hunters or Mages, you would 100% want to drop that. But if you're playing with classes that just do damage, and there's lots of pet classes on the other team, then Improved Sunfire is really good, and it's going to be a huge DPS increase to take. So you got to remember those little rules. Stampede when you're playing with classes at CC, so you don't break CC, and you're really focused on single target and mobility with the cooldown reduction. And then Sunfire when you're playing with classes that don't care if you break their CC or they don't have CC they can break. And there's lots of pet classes that you can dot and get Astral Power generation from, and you're going to flip those around. Now you can also flop Ursine Vigor out for Innervate. This is if you're playing with healers like Paladins or Shamans that are probably going to struggle on mana, or even Disc Priests, they're going to struggle on mana compared to Resto Druids or Mistweaver Monks, and this can help you, kind of edge that healer disadvantage against the other one. So you can see there's quite a little bit of talent flipping around that you're going to be doing with this build. In particular, the Starfall one's a little bit more automated. Now you can run Decurse. I pretty much only think Decurse is valuable against Warlocks when no one else on your team can Decurse, because you have to lose a lot. In order to get it, you're gonna have to lose the Typhoon cooldown reduction to get Rejuvenation. You're probably gonna have to lose the Stampede cooldown, and you probably have to lose 1 point in Ursine to be able to get down to Decurse. But it is really important if you're fighting a Warlock who puts an Amp Curse of Weakness on like a Warrior on your team and they can't crit. They're gonna be really hindered by that. But this is like really high skill cap level of Moonkin. I will note that last season I played not a single game with Decurse, and I was rank 1 slot until literally the last couple of hours of Moonkin. So you can get away with not playing it. You lose a lot. Rejuve and Swiftbend are pretty much useless, and it's only really useful for removing Curse of Weakness on melee DPS on your teammates. So that's pretty much the only situation where I think I would ideally want to take it, is like I've got a Warrior or a Windwalker or even a Ret Paladin on my team, and my healer can't Decurse. And I want to run this to dispel Amp Curse of Weakness off them so they can get critical strikes and I have a higher chance of winning. That would be the time where you would flip these points out in order to get Decurse. But again, like I said, I was able to get to the top of the ladder not even playing Decurse. You could also change the Typhoon radius and still get Stampede. I like the range because it lets me interrupt healers. There's a lot of customization on the Druid side of the tree for you to kind of experiment with. I just wanted to run through my thoughts here initially for what I'm thinking in terms of talents and what I'm going to be trying to do and what I've preferentially preferred. Now, gearing gets a little bit complicated this season. I will say that you want to follow a basic rule of thumb. If something has haste versatility, you want to equip that item. If something doesn't have haste versatility, you want to craft that item to be haste versatility. So similar to last season, you can see that my rings are haste versatility and they're crafted. And that's because the conquest pieces, well, one of them has haste versatility, but the other one doesn't. And the neck piece I've crafted for haste versatility because I want to lose a little bit of verse and prefer haste instead. So this same rule still applies, but when we look at the tier set gear, you're going to notice that some of the stats are different. So for this set of tier gear, you're going to really want to get the pants, and you're going to really want to get the shoulders. And I am experimenting with this tier piece because I don't actually think that it is very good. Now, in Rated Battlegrounds or Battleground Blitz, I think the 4-piece could actually be really good, but in Arena, I'm not so sure. Basically, this is going to be when your Eclipse ends, enter a Dream State, and then your next 2 casts of Starfires or Wrath are going to do 40% more damage. It's going to be 100% more damage and cast 20% faster. So 50% more damage and 20% faster with your set bonuses. It lets you get into Eclipse a little bit easier. So if you're not getting attacked, it's going to be really nice in those situations. But I'm imagining that the damage component of this is going to be pretty negligible. So it's mostly just about getting you back into Eclipse a little bit sooner. Now, the stats on those pieces are decent, so it's likely going to be okay to pick up the shoulders and pants. You're absolutely going to want to avoid the helmet, though. So I would not recommend picking, even if you get the tier piece helmet in your vault. Remember, you're not going to be able to buy everything immediately from the vendor. You're gearing up through the vault. It's a slow gearing process, so you got to be very particular with what you're choosing, which is why it's important to pay attention to this part. I would not choose the helmet because the set bonus isn't that good, and picking a slot that has heavy crit is just not going to be good. And the chest piece also has heavy crit. You want to avoid those 2 pieces. I ultimately, like, picking between the 2, it's really going to depend on what our haste values are at as to which one you're going to want to go for. If we're following the rules from last season, you would want to avoid the chest completely and get the helmet. So maybe, avoid the chest 100%. Likely, try not to pick up the helmet if there's a better upgrade that you can get, because the set bonus isn't that good from the vault. At least the 4-piece in those situations. Now, because of that, if we aren't going to be getting the tier piece chest guaranteed, we want to make sure that we're crafting precognition on something. So the safe slots to craft precognition would be like a ring. Last season I crafted it on the gloves. just because there wasn't, you didn't want the PP gloves. I think they were reverse mastery, and I didn't want the tier gloves, so I crafted on the gloves. Safe embellishment crafting locations are rings for precognition. If you want to go that route, definitely go that route. Or you can put it on the chest piece, because we're going to craft a chest piece with this build. That you can see haste versus mastery, or haste mastery was last season's tier gear. This current tier gear, we're probably gonna have to craft that piece with the trophy from the conquest vendor when it becomes available next week, and you could put precognition on that slot instead. But again, if you want to be really safe with your gearing up, just slap it on a ring with haste versatility, and that's going to be a little bit easier. The reason that I say chest piece is because chest piece is more stats, so you can buy a chest piece and craft it right away and get huge stat bonuses, as opposed to buying a ring as one of your first items, which is not going to be the most amount of stats. And that's how you got to think about it. It's going to be initially a better upgrade, and assuming that I'm correct with this itemization, it's going to be perfectly fine to put it on the chest, and you're going to get more stats immediately to put it on your chest, and have a little bit of an advantage earlier on in the season, and at the end it ends up being the same. So it's just an advantage early with no difference at the end, assuming that we are going to completely avoid the chest, which I'm really imagining that we are. The second embellishment is likely still going to be Spore Cloak. It has been nerfed significantly, and I will run along with this guide and update this guide as things go along, because I'm sure there's going to be class changes as well. But this is a safe one to make. I'd say make it later. Kind of avoid crafting the Spore Cloak for a little bit, just to see how things play out in terms of its power and its potency. But you're 100% going to want precognition. And the problems with if you run precognition is then you can't run the PvE embellishments, which are like poison damage procs that stack together, because you need them both together. You need double Shadow Flame to really get value from them. That's the problem right now with that embellishment. It's just Spore Cloak fits really nicely as a defensive option, even though it's not really that strong anymore. And aside from that, we're going to be getting the pants, we're going to be getting the tier shoulders. We can buy conquest pieces with haste versatility aside from that. And if there aren't conquest pieces with haste verse, then we're going to have to craft that slot. Is going to be the basic rule. Now, a little kind of trick you can do at the start of the season is the bloody token weapon that has haste verse, which I've got right here. I would highly recommend getting this. And I think next week the trophies unlock with it. You'll be able to get an epic version of this, which is supposedly only like 3 or 4 item levels lower than a conquest weapon. And early season, this is like the best thing to get from that world PvP vendor, is just an epic weapon, because the only other time you're going to want to get a conquest weapon in the gearing up phase is from the vault. You're not going to want to purchase it. It's way too many conquest points, and it's a waste of stats when you can get the world PvP item version of it. Some other pieces to consider, let's say you get lucky in the vault and you get a weapon, are the boots, because look, the boots have haste and versatility. You can upgrade this with trophies, and it's going to put you in a decent spot. The next one as well are the pants. They have haste and versatility. Basically any world PvP item that has haste and versatility, when you go to the bloody token vendor, when you upgrade it with trophies, is going to be good. Pants are a little bit bad, because again, we want the tier pants, so if they pop up and we upgraded that pants first, it might be bad. So I'd recommend upgrading the boots and the weapon first, and then if you still haven't somehow gotten pants for tier gear, then you can take that next third slot and work on it. But basically anything that has haste and versatility on it for that world PvP vendor, you're likely going to want to pick up. And aside from that, you're just going to fill the holes in with honor gear. You're going to replace all of this gear with honor gear, because it's like 20 plus stats higher. Even the precognition embellishment items and socketed items, I'm going to replace all of this with honor gear. And you're not really gonna have to think about it. Just any honor pieces that have haste verse, try and get them. If slots don't have it, try and get mastery instead. Try and avoid crit if you can. Crit's not going to be good. And you're just going to slap on full honor gear for the initial stages, and then slowly work your conquest up the same way you did last season until you're at this point in your gear. And that's going to be your main kind of goal as far as your gearing goes. And it's just important to pay attention to what you're trying to do with it. But yeah, on Tuesday, slap on all the honor gear. Don't worry about it. And as you're buying your conquest gear, start focusing on tailoring every piece to haste and versatility, precognition, a crafted item on the chest, or a ring if you're really worried about it and you don't trust me, but I think I'm pretty right with it being good on the chest. So you can get that chest piece early and get precog on it and get a huge stat boost, and you can shortcut some item level with these world PvP pieces with trophies when they come out on Tuesday. So let's show you some gameplay. I've been really enjoying Battleground Blitz, honestly, on a lot of different classes. Now, with Balance Rate particularly, we're going to be focusing on the Starfall build. So again, main goal is to keep Moonfire and Sunfire on as many things as possible and press Starfall as much as we can. I love picking up this Absorb Shield right away on this Battleground. It's super OP, but get Moonfire and Sunfire up, Fury of Elune out as soon as possible for the cooldown reduction, pop Incarn. We're going to Star Surge when it's single target. It's not ideal, but we got our Wild Mushroom up and dumped out 3 Star Surges, and you still get some decent single target damage with this build as well. He's gotten gotten away. Now we're going to go to AoEing, Sunfire, Moonfire for everybody. Starfall's up. Jump down into the pit. Get ready to Typhoon things. We don't want to get CC'd. We're Stellar Flaring because we can free cast. Whenever you can free cast, we're going to Stellar Flare and get that triple dot going because it's going to be really important for your Astral Power engine. And this is where your damage is going to start popping off when you're using Starfalls and getting Star Surge procs and using Wild Mushrooms to snare enemies and get triple dots and sometimes quadruple dots up onto a target. You're just going to do so much damage. Starfall rolling. You just want to make sure Starfall's up as much as possible. Bark Skin when you're taking damage and Renewal. Stampede away. This is why I really like the low cooldown Stampede because you can reposition with it with Wild Charge. It's a really good combo. Wild Charge Stampede. Sprint back up top. Get your dots back going. Get your Starfall up. Get those Starbursts in. If you play towards edges and in corners, you can manipulate the Starburst to spawn on top of you. So I would recommend like playing in corners and trying to find edges so you can get those Starbursts to spawn in a condensed location so you can get the Astral Power generation, the damage, and the knockups. Try and get some high ground advantage otherwise and just stay a safe distance away so that you can free cast on your enemies from down below. Always trying to get into Eclipse before you start spamming your Starfall. So we're back into Luna there with 2 Wraths. Just still spamming Starfall, proccing Wild Mushrooms for triple dots. Stellar Flares up. We got a Star Surge proc. Lob that over onto pretty much anything. Again, ideally you would have 2 dots on the target or even 3 for Waning Twilight before you Star Surge. But with the changes to our mastery and everything like that, it's still going to be basically 75% of the effective DPS. And you can see we're doing like 170k DPS sustained throughout this. And honestly, I should be cycloning. I'm really just padding the meter, but letting this Fistweaver monk running around doing whatever he wants and healing through my damage is the main reason they're not just falling over. If I cyclone this Mistweaver like a single time, their entire team is just going to get absolutely decimated. So we got full dots up. We're going to root beam the Mistweaver, Stellar Flares onto as many things as we can while we can free cast for that Astral Power generation. And we're just going to start spamming out Starfalls. And also if they dispel our Stellar Flares, they're going to take a huge hit of damage, which is really nice as kind of a backlash for any healers that are spamming dispels. Warrior starts focusing us down. It's not a big deal. We've got Bark Skin to trade if we need to. We've also got Thorns coming up. It's a lot easier when the melee are attacking you also to maximize your Thorn damage. But when you're getting attacked, you use instant Starfires instead of Wraths to get into Eclipse, and you'll just be in Solar Eclipse instead of Lunar. We Typhoon the monk back, and I've realized like, okay, we got to cycle in the Fistweaver. But watch, we cycle in the Fistweaver, Warrior's dead. Priest is about to die. Priest falls up. 1 Cyclone, and our damage is a lot more relevant. So, you know, don't just totally turn your brain off like I did. I was just having some fun trying to see how much damage I could do in this specific instance. You do want to try and utilize Cyclone onto enemy healers so that your damage is going to stick a little bit more onto the board, especially something like a Fistweaver monk, because otherwise they're just going to run around and basically take 0 damage. But the moral of the story here is that I'm really enjoying Balanced Druid. It's really versatile, highly customizable. It's a lot more accessible than any other patch, and it's really powerful in all PvP content, so I would highly recommend it moving forward here for 10.2. I hope you enjoyed this gearing guide, talent guide, and gameplay guide. If you have, make sure to hit the subscribe button, comment down below with your thoughts. I could do this for a lot more specializations as well. I've been covering and playing a lot of them, so if you'd like me to cover a specific specialization and run down it for you for a guide and what I think, I can definitely do that. But other than that, thank you very much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.